It is Tuesday, October 14th of 2025, and the first order of business would be the roll call.
Okay, Abel.
Here.
Nino.
Here.
Caravello.
Here.
Wozniak Scanlon.
Here.
Sherlucky. Hirsch. Jensen.
Here.
Just in time. Tillison.
Go Brewers.
Reeves.
Here.
Butler.
Here.
Schumacher.
Here.
Giano.
Here.
Okay, we have 10 alders present and Sherlucky and Hirsch absent and excused.
All right, thank you, Candy. We do have two public hearings scheduled for tonight, so we'll start out the meeting with the first one, and that's regarding amending chapter section 78-105, which is the Central Business District. So we'll close our regular meeting and open it for the public hearing. I didn't have anybody signed up to speak regarding the Central Business District, but certainly if anybody here wants to do that, you're welcome to. Seeing for the Central Business District?
Yeah, there's two items. I think maybe the arts.
Yes.
Which
Which?
I think that would be fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Last call for the Central Business District public hearing. All right, we'll close that one, and then we'll open for the public hearing for the section 78-105, parent 4, parent D, which is the Arts Zoning District. We have a number of people signed up to speak. Some of them are here. Some of them may show up online. And then I'll just go in the order that they came in. I know there was two that signed up in support, and that was Chris Ghosh. I don't see him on here right now. And then the other one was Teresa Abel. And then there was at least one that was neutral, possibly two, and then a few that want to speak that are opposed. So the first one for the podium would be Yolanda. And then you can just come up and you push the button, the red light will come on. And then you have basically 3 minutes. I have cue cards if you need warnings, but I'm guessing you won't take that long. That would be helpful. Otherwise, we do have your online sign-up form on record.
Okay. My name is Yolanda Statz. I live at 709 Paradise Drive. I'm here to voice my concern about the proposed art district zoning. This idea of having Stoughton become an art destination has been tried and failed in the past. The City Council, under the direction of the mayor, should not be rezoning one successful business out of existence to hope that another business to your liking will come in and replace it to be successful, because we have no kings. Melton Motors is an asset to Stoughton and provides a very needed service. To rezone a current successful business out of existence is plain wrong and unethical. Taking someone's means to make a living is a shame. I do wonder what's driving this push. It appears to me that there is some sort of land grab going on. Where is this push for the art district coming from? The citizens of Stoughton or some special interest group? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up would be Dave.
This is on. Good. My name is Dave Melton. I own Melton Motors and Melton Service, 435 East Main Street and 480 East Main Street. Please forgive me, this is absolutely not my forte, but I'll do the best I can. I don't have a complicated, thoughtful message here. I sent an email to all of you. I tried to come up with some questions that I had from the technical side. Hopefully you received that. Hopefully, I apologize if some of those are uninformed, but they just came to my mind. So I'm opposed to the art district zoning idea. I'm not opposed to those types of businesses. I'm not opposed at all to the wonderful people that are down there working hard and doing cool stuff. I just don't think it's necessary to put this out there and to create some sort of a unwelcome atmosphere for us. We've been here for a long time. We've tried to operate in a manner that is beneficial to the community, treating people honestly and fairly, and honestly, people that don't have a lot of money can come to us and get things done just a little cheaper, whether it's buy something or repair something. We charge just a little less, and it's important for me to do that. And I respect all my customers, and I didn't get a lot of respect here last time we had a meeting. That thing that you did, in my opinion, violated my civil rights. I signed up to speak. You told me you weren't going to discuss it, and you went through with a presentation anyway. Whether it's illegal or not, I don't know, but it felt wrong. It felt wrong. You got to respect everybody. I didn't disrespect you. I might now, but I didn't before. And I'm opposed to a mayor coming and talking to me in the middle of my business day about a private real estate deal that I got going, popping in on me like, it's wrong, it's disrespectful. Call ahead and make an appointment. I wouldn't pop in on him. It's wrong. I don't know there's anything nefarious going on here, but I'll tell you what, the way that you've acted and the things that you've done makes it look that way, even if it isn't. It's wrong. I don't appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, next would be Avery.
Hello. Hi. I'm Avery Melton. Dave's my dad. I've been working summers at our dealership since I was about 13. The passion for what my family has created has been passed down to me, and the things I've been taught are important to me, and I want to carry on. Just like my brother, who's also here, I want to carry on doing good things for this community the right way, like I was raised to do. I mean, just the disrespect that I have felt as someone who wants to carry on a family business, it's hard for me to even express how I feel because it's an emotional thing for me. Whereas you guys have been talking about the grandfather clause, and as the young and up-and-comer, to me that means, sorry, you're not going to get to grow. You're not going to get to expand. Yeah, you can stay here because you've been here for 25 years, but you're not going to get to grow. You're not going to get a chance to do more than what your family started and continue to grow what my dad worked so hard to create. And I just wish that was something that was considered from the very start. I think it would have been really easy for you guys just to, say, hey, we haven't really talked about it much, but we're looking to do this, and we respect your business you've established, and we want to make sure that you stay here and you continue to do the good work for the community that you've been doing for so long. So I question the morals of this. As a young person, it's hard for me to understand this type of thing, and it's not something I ever even thought about when looking to continue doing what my dad did, but it's been on my mind for a long time ever since this came up, and I don't know what to make of it. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I have Dan.
Hi, Daniel Christensen, 1101 Sunt Lane. Excuse the hat, Mr. Mayor, I'm having a bad hair life. I had no intention of coming. I don't know Dave or Avery, but I'm here because I watched the 9th. I'm not going to comment on it, but it was enough to make somebody who doesn't come to one of these things. You can't tell them you can't talk and then talk about it. But anyway, it's a valuable service that he provides. He's a good man. I know a lot of good things about him. And I just don't think it's right to take it over and put an art district there. And I highly doubt that that's the citizens of Stoughton asking for that. Maybe it is. Are they from Stoughton? My family's been here since the late 1800s, and I don't remember one of them wanting an art district. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak at the public hearing regarding this matter?
I'd like to speak.
Sure, come on up. Gonna need your name and your address.
Hans Hansen, 1025 East South Street in Stoughton. Like Dave said, this isn't my strong suit, so we moved probably here around 97-ish. I purchased vehicles from Dave. He's treated our family well. By purchasing vehicles from him, I continue to bring my vehicles to Dave. And now I got to know his sons, as well as I believe like he has a lot of people like within his area that are able to walk to his location, bring our vehicles to there. Now I'm bringing my work cars there, so he's been a key asset to my family. I believe he is to other families in Stoughton, and he's honest and fair. And I think he needs everybody's support, and you guys need to relook at what's going on and whatever your decisions are for this art district, because I'm not opposed to it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? Okay, we'll close the public hearing, and then we'll open up our regular meeting. And the first item is public comment. Is there anybody here to speak on any other issue that's on the agenda tonight? Nobody was signed up. All right, so we'll go to communications and presentations. And the first thing we have is our historical fact. And let me cue this up here. All right, we're ready.
All right, I told you I'd bring you something better this time. So something with a little bit of visual in it. Through looking over Facebook pages, you can see this one is the Wisconsin Open Community page. So recommend that anybody go in and check it out. It's got a wide variety of things on it, but specifically the photography that's done by a guy named Max Bowen. He doesn't live here in Stoughton, but he travels here often and looks at historic houses that are registered on historic registry. The next slide there. So he just comes through, asks permission, of course, to get photos of these houses from the owners, and they are all on historic registry. This one in particular, the Angus Owen House, Queen Anne style, 1896, with additions in 1899. So he's got decent bios in there, again drawing a lot of it from Wisconsin Historic Society, but pretty fascinating. And you know, he's not like, I think he does pretty good at getting some of these real-time photographs that are in there. He's got a little bio in there of how he came to going about doing this as well. All right, next one. E.H. Gerard House, 1901. And next one, Mary McDougall House, 1896. All the addresses and that are on here if you want to take a drive by some of them too. Next one, Frederica and Dr. Lewis Trulson House, 1902. Ingeborg Everson House, 1904. Where's this one in here? Iverson Johnson House, 1898. Yep, Dragon House, yeah. And the George Patterson House, 1897. There, fancy French ending. But recommend to go and try that one out, or look that page up specifically. You can key in on Max Bowen. That is all I have.
All right, thank you. And then the next presentation is going to be coming from Director Ramsey from the library. As he walks up, I'll get that one queued up here quick.
Thank you. I won't take up too much of your time tonight, but one of the pieces of business that you have in front of you is Resolution 142, 2025. It's regarding exemption from the county library tax. So this resolution is identical to ones that you've considered annually in past years. It commits the city to funding the library at or above what's called the minimum appropriation. Municipalities that meet this obligation can request exemption from the county library tax. So that's what this resolution would be doing. This resolution states that the city will fund the library at a level which enables the city to request exemption from the tax. So I also want to take this opportunity, as I do every year, to talk briefly about county funding of libraries and about library funding in general. So how is the library funded? Well, so this slide here shows our 2025 budget year. You can see the contributions of Stoughton taxpayers there in orange. That is in the form of a transfer from the city's general fund to the library board that's made every year. That makes up the lion's share of our budget, about 68%. The smaller share comes from Dane County in the form of what we call county reimbursements or county service fees. And that's what I'm going to talk about in more detail tonight. Essentially, this is the county paying libraries for services provided to people who live in a municipality without a library and those who live in municipalities that have libraries. So it's this funding that I'll discuss in more detail. Quickly, I'll just mention there is a small slice of pie there, the red piece, the $15,297 in 2025. That is reimbursements from other counties for services provided to their patrons or their residents. And for us, that mostly means Rock County, as you might imagine. You can go on to the next slide. So county reimbursements are calculated based on use, which in our world means circulation, like checking out of physical things. This is not the best metric, but it is the easiest to collect. Our database knows where our patrons live and where they pay taxes. And here you see the top 10 census tracts in which patrons lived who checked out books and other items at our library in the 12-month period from July of 24 through June of 25. As you would expect, the majority of our users live in the city of Stoughton, and the rest come from the surrounding municipalities, both those that have a library, like the village of McFarland, the village of Oregon, but mostly those municipalities that don't. During this period, most of our patrons living outside of the city came from the towns of Dunkirk, Pleasant Springs, and Dunn, pretty much in that order. You can go on to the next one. So reimbursements are paid by Dane County annually based on this usage, averaged out over the last 3 years. The formula is pretty complicated. It takes into account both the services provided, which is items checked out, but also our facilities based on our building square footage. At the heart of the formula, though, is the cost per circulation. This is just the total expenditures of the library divided by the number of things checked out in the year. State law requires counties to reimburse libraries at no less than 70% of cost per circ, but because Dane County recognizes the value in public libraries and the value that they provide to their communities, they reimburse at 100%, which some, but not all counties do. I can go on to the next slide. This shows a trend line in county reimbursements or service fees that our libraries received from Dane County over the past decade plus. You can see between 2013 and 2020, payments from the county hovered between $200,000 and $250,000. The circulation numbers used to calculate county reimbursements are averaged over 3 years, like I said, to avoid a disproportionate impact of one bad year. However, including the abysmal numbers from 2020 and 2021 would have tanked everyone's reimbursements. And for this reason, the Dane County Library Board decided to disregard those years when calculating reimbursements and essentially freeze the reimbursement, which you see is that flat area there, from 2021 to 2023. Since then, though, you can see that our county reimbursements have increased substantially each year. Next year, we're scheduled to receive $331,889 from the county. You probably already figured out that the more people that use our library, the more reimbursements we receive. So also, conversely, if there are disincentives that make our library less attractive, poor location, outdated facilities, shabby, outdated collections, this works against us. The funding model based strictly on checkouts places libraries in a sort of competition with each other for users. That's just the way the county funding works. That's one limitation of the current model of county funding. The other limitation came to light during the pandemic when a lot of our buildings were closed for a period of time and offering alternative services like curbside pickup and virtual programs. The shock of the pandemic made us realize what we've always known, that the circulation statistics don't fully capture the value that a library provides to their community. Notably, these statistics count only circulation of physical items and not use of streaming and downloadable content, which ever since the pandemic, I mean, before the pandemic was trending upwards, but that the pandemic really just set that off, and that is increasing year after year. These are services like Libby, Canopy, Hoopla, some of you may be familiar with and some of you hopefully use for downloadable content. So in 2023, though, the county hired a consultant to look at the county reimbursement formula, and they came up with a proposal for a new kind of reimbursement. So remember I said that libraries are reimbursed for both the materials that they check out and for their physical facilities. In 2026, Dane County Library Services proposing adding a third kind of reimbursement, one for programming that libraries provide to county residents. Unfortunately, this additional reimbursement was not included in the county executive's 2025 budget, and I can say it's probably not likely to be included in the 2026 budget. But this would mean additional county funding for all Dane County libraries if this proposal were to go through. You can go on to the next slide. So that's how the county funds libraries. But back to the minimum appropriation, which is the subject of this resolution. It's not the only requirement for exemption from the county library tax. There are 4 library standards, used to be 6, now 4, that the libraries must meet in order for the municipality to be exempt from the county library tax. The minimums for these standards, and they are open hours, staff as FTE, public internet computers, and material expenditures. These minimums are set based on the municipal population. Go on to the next slide. The minimum appropriation, on the other hand, the subject of this resolution, is based on the equalized value of property. Go to the next slide. So you see here the 2026 minimum appropriations for the villages and cities in Dane County. This is also, of course, in your packet. The column labeled 2025 APP, 2025 appropriation, shows the actual amount appropriated in 2025 according to each library's annual report. Just a quick look tells you that most, if not all, municipalities are funding their libraries well above the minimum, because the minimum is just that, a rock bottom figure. The minimum, by the way, is the amount the municipality would have to pay in county library tax if it chose not to support a library, or if the library standards weren't being met. Go to the next one. I promise I only have like 2 more slides. You can see here the historical minimum appropriation amounts for Stoughton over the last 9 or so years. Again, these amounts correspond to the equalized value of property in the city. So, as the equalized value has gone up, the minimum appropriation has gone up. You can go to the next slide. You can see here on this table showing minimum versus actual appropriation for 2025. The only cities that are funding only slightly above the minimum are those where the equalized value has increased so rapidly and the minimum has grown so quickly that their cities are having a hard time keeping up. In 2025, Stoughton funded the library at 118% of the minimum. For 2026, the amount of the appropriation that is in the mayor's budget is around $726,000. The minimum for 2026 is 635, 253. That means in 2026, the municipality will be funding the library at 114% of the minimum. So we're very happy with the support that the city has given to the library. And I want to leave you with one last slide here. This is this shows the support per capita of Dane County libraries. In other words, this is the tax burden per person on municipal residents being served by these libraries. This is just calculated by taking the municipal appropriation and dividing it by the municipal population, so nothing more fancy than that. You can see Stoughton down there at $55.79 per capita. This is not to suggest that the library or that the city isn't adequately funding the library. Far from it. We are grateful for the support we've received in the mayor's 2026 budget. What this does show is that Stoughton residents and the residents of the surrounding communities are getting a fantastic value for their tax dollar. It shows that there is room to grow, and as our community grows, we hope to grow right along with it. I'd be happy to take any questions.
All right, any questions for Director Ramsey? All right.
Thank you.
Questions? Okay, I'll queue up the next one, and that's going to be from the Opera House. It'll just take me a minute to find it again. For some reason, it didn't download right for me.
Red does not mean stop. Red means go.
All right, let me just share this for the online viewers, and we'll be ready to roll here.
Great.
We're good to go.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Christina Dahlhausen, and I actually worked at the Stoughton Opera House from 2006 to 2016 as the event coordinator. So some of you look familiar, but there's a lot of new faces here too. So I'm very familiar with the Opera House and what's happened over the years. I went off and moved to the Vernon County area, Viroqua area, and learned a whole new set of skills in regards to I became their economic development coordinator for the county. And I did that for a good 6-7 years. And I was ready to make a career change, and the Stoughton Opera House Friends Association was looking for somebody to help do more fund development and grant writing and really beef that up. So I just happened to be at the right phone call at the right time. So now I'm the Stoughton Opera House Friends Association's development coordinator. And today I'd like to share with you some great news. And first, I just want to thank the City Council for their continued support and investment in the Stoughton Opera House. Today I'm going to show you how that investment in the Stoughton Opera House is actually paying off. Last year I was able to share our first economic impact update. And this year I'm excited to bring some new numbers and economic trends and the Opera House's growing impact, not just in Stoughton, but throughout the region. And the Opera House is one of the strongest economic engines in Stoughton. Next slide, please. I just said all this thing in that slide. But we are a very strong economic engine in Stoughton. But this is now, these ticket revenue trends is something interesting. We have about 75 ticketed shows throughout the season. And the season runs September through May. And we bounced back out of COVID and came out strong in 2021, 2022, and then we saw another big bump in 23, 24. And right now, the season, when you talk per season, that's the blue, that's tracking very well so far, as we are up, well, we're almost at 567,000, and we're only in October, so that's looking good. There's going to be new spring shows. They're going to be added for 2026, which means more visitors and more local spending. And if we look at the revenues by calendar year, and that's in the red, I have a couple emojis in there because I like to keep things fun. In 2008, we were just over $100,000, and then there was the COVID dip, which is completely recognizable of what happened there. And then it's just continued to grow after that, and we're now in 2025 nearly $800,000, and that's as of October, and that's the ticket revenue for calendar year. I'm saying all these numbers because this is how we tracked the impact that happens in Stoughton. It kind of shows how many people come, how much money is being spent, and then how much that's multiplied. Next one, please. This is membership revenue growth. So basically at the beginning of the season or throughout the year, you can be able to buy a membership at the Stoughton Opera House, and that membership gets you in on early bird ticketing. We've had some exponential growth in that area from even in my years of where I worked as the event coordinator back in '08 and '09. It was only 12,500. But if you as the years have gone on, there's been more local investment, and it shows that we're not only having loyalty for returning audiences, but there's new visitors and new people coming, so we're attracting new audiences as well. And we are now 13 times higher than we were back in '08 and '09 at 172,718 in the current 25-26 season, and that's just continued to kind of tick up. So it's a powerhouse of community support. Next slide, please. By the numbers, this is where we get all diving into the numbers, which I really like. I like words, but I also like numbers too because they prove a point. These numbers prove that the investment of the Opera House is paying off. So the ticket sales in 25-26 so far is 12,952, and that's so far. That's not even with the added shows that we have and people that buy tickets the week of the show, so there's still a lot of room to grow there. And then 23-24 season, we're at about 11,500 tickets. So we're already surpassing that. The total visitors last season was over 30,000 people that came through the doors. And we can track that through ticketed events, the free community events that we have, like Music Appreciation Mondays, the Catfish River Music Festival, holiday events, and daily tours for visitors. When we go with the growth context, that Stoughton is projected to grow by 3.5% in 2030. Now, if you go with that growth that's going to be happening, there's a statewide trend that's happened as well, and recreation and entertainment is up 4.8% from last year. So it just shows that when you're investing in the Opera House and you're going with the trends of what's trending and also the growth of where Stoughton is going, it means that when you continue to invest in the Stoughton Opera House, you're investing in Stoughton's growth. Next slide, please. Event-related spending. So you probably know this. You buy the ticket for the Opera House, but what else do you do when you're in Stoughton? You go out to eat. You go to the restaurants. You maybe stay overnight. You go to the retail, and that's all helping the local businesses. So beyond the ticket prices, audiences spend more money locally, and you can be able to also go through these how this all works, and it does show like the yellow is from the 23-24 season. And the blue is from the 24-25 season. As you can see, it just notched up just a bit, which means that we're right on track. And so when residents come to town, or when residents are here and they go to an Opera House show, they probably spend about $25 in the local community. A day tripper, and that's somebody who's about 30 miles away, which we have a lot of Madison folks that come, and we call them a day tripper. They spend about $77, and that's above and beyond the ticket. And then overnights, that's about 25% of the audiences that are coming. They spend $226 in our local economy when they come for an Opera House show. So we can get all those numbers together, and we go to the next slide, which is one of my favorite slides. The total spent in the 24-25 season was $3.2 million. That's above and beyond the ticket price. That's the number that we can go onto the clock tower and we can say out loud of what the Opera House has done for the local economy. And that is a 6.5% increase from last year's economic impact report that I gave, which was in the $3 million spot. Now slide 7. Oh, yep. So beyond economics, we know that there's a community value for here. We have accessibility projects that we've really gone up and above in regards to keeping things free and accessible to students and to families. And we have a hearing aid loop type of thing that's going to help with more people being able to hear. We have a live stream capabilities of where so people that are at homebound can be able to see the shows at the Opera House. And there are other things like that. We've had our business sponsorships and partnerships are up from years past. Obviously, just putting some effort into it with as being the development coordinator. But It just shows that sponsoring the Catfish River Music Festival and other things that are happening, it's a good way for local businesses to align with our brand at the Stoughton Opera House. And you know, you actually don't have to take my word for it. I have a friend here who's become a friend, and his name is Mark Belligan, and he's a Stoughton resident, and he's also a newly appointed SOFA, which is a Stoughton Opera House Friends Association board member. And he has just a couple words to say about the impact that the Stoughton Opera House has had on him.
Thanks, Christina. Thanks, everybody, for hearing our message today. I do have a few words. My name is Mark Belligan. I live up here by the hospital on Ridge Street, aka the temporary Main Street. I'm a physician assistant with Stoughton Hospital. I'm staffing their ER and urgent cares. I've been doing so for about 3 years. Since starting with the hospital, I've lived here for about that time too. Newest member of the Friends Organization board with the Opera House, and I want to tell you about the first night I spent in this town before moving here, seeing one of my favorite artists, Jeffrey Foucault, at the Opera House a few months before I moved here. I can speak from firsthand experience as one of the overnighters that Christina referred to, and from my first experience, I was floored, not only by the quality of the production on stage and the acoustics and the beautiful ornate detail of painstakingly restored venue, but also the sense of comfort and community that was conveyed right from that first night. I can remember the show wasn't a big seller, and Bill Bram, and the director of the Opera House, in his usual onstage introduction of the band and orientation of the audience to the theater, he did something that I'd never seen before in decades of seeing live shows all over the country. In his welcoming remarks, he encouraged folks to sit wherever they wanted, in any unoccupied seat, of course. But a simple invitation imparted a feeling of comfort at a time in my life when that was really helpful to hear. I'd bought a ticket with the intent of sitting close to the stage, because don't most people? But after he said that, I actually wandered up to the balcony for the rest of the show to be able to take in more of the room, to really be able to marvel at the scene around me, every bit as much as the performance. And from that bird's eye view, there's a sense of home almost, like watching a show in one's own living room. A microcosm of community encapsulated in that evening, an intangible warmth on a frosty March night. After dozens of shows later and just as many of Bill's opening spiels, I'm still hooked. So maybe painting a picture of an undersold gig isn't the ideal scene to exemplify the economic benefit of the Opera House. But in my time, I've had the pleasure of seeing smaller shows like that first one that always lend themselves to a heightened sense of intimacy, even if not as much of a cash cow for the community. But whether there have been 20 people in the audience or a full clamoring house, like the recent Mavis Staples show, if anybody had a chance to make it to that one. Iconic show, fantastic lady. That feeling of warmth, of welcome by Bill and the staff and the volunteers, and the engagement of the fans with each other and their hosts has been present just as much as the inspiration from the sights and the sounds of the music and the venue. I'm just about done here, bear with me. The economic contribution of the Opera House to the community of Stoughton speaks for itself. Christina's more of an expert on crunching and interpreting those numbers, and I do appreciate the story that they tell on their own. But on top of that, in my opinion, there's a deeper value. I was excited to move to this town for many reasons, but chief among them that continues to resonate was that feeling of community that the Opera House embodies and fosters among fans coming from right up the hill here, like me, and from all over the state and outlying areas to see and make music and enjoy this fabulous theater. That's also what the city is investing in and drawing returns from every bit as much as its continued financial help. Community in any form is a benefit unto itself, to all of our well-being, and I'm grateful to the city for their support and partnership to help enrich that strong sense of home that's come along with living in it, in my opinion, in the greatest little town in Wisconsin. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Mark. That's really sweet. And it's all true. I believe it. The next slide, please. So yes, the Stoughton Opera House Friends Association is the nonprofit that essentially helps support capital projects at the Opera House, maintenance, fundraising, that does a lot of the various like upgrades of like sound equipment, lights and stuff like that. And has been founded in 2014, and since its founding, and all these projects, as you can see, from the hearing aid loop to new cushions on the seats. I mean, that's been very popular. And Ghost Light Lounge, that's also been popular. That's with that lounge on the main floor. They've invested over $500,000 into the Opera House to keep it the gem and that it is. Next slide, please. And looking ahead, well, first we're going to survive that road construction. I think we're all going to do that. We're going to do it together. And we got the season going right underway at the 25-26 season. It's looking good. 2 Mavis Staples sold-out shows. Next month we have Grammy Award winner Del McCurry Band coming. So it's just a star-studded packed season. And we have some projects that are upcoming. You know, everything from the Ghost Light remodel. We're going to remodel that out and bring it so more flow of traffic that kind of be able to, or the traffic of the people, so there's a little more space to room. There's going to be a merchandise area so we can be able to have some revenue generation. I think some people are going to love wearing some good old Stoughton Opera House t-shirts, and I have an idea for chandelier earrings, but that's another day. We have some accessibility projects so we can have some more people, you know, at different levels to be able to come and experience the Opera House. And we're also, the Stoughton Opera House is going to be having, the SOFA is going to have an end of year friend fundraiser. So you may receive something in your inbox or in your mail in regards to that. And then also we're going to be doing some theater ceiling paint restoration probably in early 2026. Last one. So in closing, you know, once again, thank you for your continued support. As we grow, Stoughton grows. We draw nearly 30,000 visitors to the area every single year. We strengthen the local economy and the community identity. And again, we generate $3.2 million in local spending. That's above and beyond the ticket price. And together, we'll just keep making Stoughton move forward. Really, I thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Any questions for Christina? Alderperson Tillison.
Thank you, Mayor. Really like the slides on the local economic impact.
Thank you.
My question is, where's that data coming from?
Okay, yes, I had a little citation on there.
I couldn't see it.
I'm sorry. So basically, there's a couple different locations. So
Okay.
Travel Wisconsin, they do metrics and data that they collect in regards to like how much, you know, like inflation and how everything, like room tax and believe things like that. And so basically they can track all that data so they can be able to track tourism trends. And so Travel Wisconsin is one of those places where they have an economic impact calculator. Another place is the National Independent Venue Association. And they also have, where they're actually tracking more of the arts and live music and how that tracks in regards to, you know, local economic impact. So I pulled data from there. And again, I even used some of my old tricks in the economic development world of being able to find that data. You need that data to be able to also help write grants and to be able to prove that you've done the homework behind it, and that, you know, so that's why that data is so important.
For sure. Any local businesses that you reach out to talk about those numbers?
Yes, I do. I do a survey with some local businesses just to see if, like, how they've done, you know, like with days that aren't Opera House days and days that are Opera House days. And of course, these local businesses that are sponsors of the Catfish River Music Festival and even some other things that are going just on the Opera House days themselves, we're always sharing feedback back and forth on what's happening. And after this report today, I'm actually going to reach out to them and do a press release that we can all use together and be able to really like lift up Stoughton. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions for Christina? All right, thanks again for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Okay, we'll go into our business items, and the first one would be the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion.
Motion by Tillotson, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Abel. Would anybody like anything on the consent agenda acted on separately? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. Next item would be ordinance 30 of 2025. This would be a first reading. This is the Central Business District. This came from the Plan Commission. Alderperson Caravello.
And this is ordinance 30 of 2025, an ordinance amending chapter section 78-105 parentheses 4 parentheses C, Central Business District, and this is a first reading.
All right, anything you want to cover on this one, or our Director Munce Pritchard?
Okay, so as we've talked about before, we're working on updating our entire zoning code. The first really major one that came up and has since been approved is the multifamily zoning district. When that got approved, it kind of created a little bit of an odd echo within our zoning code, right? So everything references multifamily, and so we're systematically going through and trying to update our zoning code so that it's meeting those minimum requirements. Central Business District was on the radar as the next one coming up because of the changes in the multifamily residential zoning code made the Central Business District out of compliance. So that is why we had to update this code. In doing so, when we were looking at the Arts District, there was questions about why the Arts District was requiring parking, and we didn't have it in the Central Business District, so that's why these are going together. New developments in the Central Business District that are like brand new businesses, and I can go through the slides again, essentially will require 1 parking stall per dwelling unit on new developments, not existing ones. So if it's like a brand new building, it's been torn down and rebuilt, then they have to have 1 parking stall. If it's an existing building that they're, have second and third floor residents, then they don't require parking. So that was thought process. But would you guys like me to go through slides again? We can do that. I'm kind of looking for direction from you, and I can go into more detail on some of the other stuff if you'd like.
Alderperson Reeves.
Not actually a question, but I just was noticing on the ordinance, do we need to change the date introduced? They have for the first and second reading, they have the September date, so
Yep.
just
Yes.
a minor detail.
Yep. Yeah, I think you'll see, in the supporting documents, basically the components of what would be basically permitted in the district, and then what could be permitted under conditional use is, I don't know if you want to go through that and explain what the differences would be.
I can, and I just want to be clear, this is like one of several. So just to give an idea, just this year, and I'm not even going to name all of them, we have updated the 2-family dwelling unit, the minimum lot width requirement. We've added a pocket neighborhood overlay district. We've updated the reinspection fees, and also all of the zoning code that was out of date for building inspection because it hadn't been done. We added the tobacco products. We went through and looked at sustainable lands with the land division, and that's just like a small portion of the overall ordinances that we've been looking at, and that doesn't include last year.
And there's still others that we're going to do, like the sign ordinance.
Yes, and a lot of these are either out of date, they don't meet minimum requirements for state codes. There's a whole slew of reasons that we have to do these, and they're going to keep coming. So if you guys are concerned, I would encourage you to start watching the Plan Commission meetings. I know this art district, it was at the May, the June, July, and August. And I also looked, it also falls under the rail corridor that was approved in 2009, and it specifically calls out some of the stuff in the arts district, and it's in that district. So since we're talking about the central business, I'll go ahead and pull up the the PowerPoint, I can give a really broad overview, and then we can ask questions if you guys want. Does that work?
And I think the intent of the districts is, first of all, is to modernize our codes and get them up to date. But secondly, to really make the approval processes more streamlined. And that's something that the state of Wisconsin has been encouraging. Chris and I have both participated in the Dane County Housing Strategy. We've been working with them to implement their strategic plan on zoning codes. So there's a real emphasis, especially for housing. Some of this also falls into the commercial as well, but certainly the intent is not to take out a successful business. I mean, that's the last thing we want to do. When I go downtown and I visit businesses, and I visit several of them, what I try to do is figure out what the city can do to help and support the businesses, whether they're new, old, or they're businesses that want to consider relocating to Stoughton. So it's not uncommon for myself and our economic development team to go down and talk to business owners on a variety of issues. And our intent is really to support the businesses and to support the investment, not only in the businesses, but in our historic buildings in our downtown district. And I'm really pleased with the progress that we've made in the last several years. Most of the buildings downtown are full. There's a couple, 3 businesses right now. They're doing work on the interior and exterior work using historical preservation and tax credits that we've tried to promote to have investment in our building, just as we do with the Opera House. So really, our intentions are good. Sorry if maybe things didn't come out that way, but that's certainly not our intent. We're here to support our businesses because that's what supports our community. And I think that our downtown is a great example for other communities would die to have a downtown like Stoughton, and the way we thrived and we've recovered from the pandemic. And even through the road construction, you know, for the most part, the businesses are doing well. It's been very challenging. But we're continuing to invest and support in our downtown businesses, and updating our codes is one way that we do that.
And I would like to make it very clear, it's really not uncommon to update ordinances and adopt new ordinances, but I've never gone in and rezoned a property without the approval of that landowner. I have never done that, and it's not practice, and you shouldn't do it. You should be always talking to that landowner. So I wouldn't have done that, and I heard through the grapevine he was not interested, and so I didn't approach him about becoming part of the Arts District. He's got a business there. So with that said, I can talk about the Central Business District, and we can talk about some of the things that we're changing in that. I'll go ahead and get going on that part of it. So we've got the Central Business District. I talked about what essentially was the reason that we updated that zoning code. When you have zoning, you have what's a permitted use and you have a conditional use. Permitted use is outright. Conditional use requires a CUP. The conditional use permit in this case was being required for things like restaurants and whatnot in the downtown area. One of the changes that's coming out of this is it's not required for an existing building for a restaurant for a CUP unless they're carrying alcohol. I know one of my first weeks at work here, we had to require a conditional use permit for the fruit shop below the Viking. That seems like a waste of time and money for landowners that are out there. So that was one of the things we streamlined. So the only reason that a conditional use permit would be required by those kind of businesses, which is what we want to have in the downtown area, is for taverns selling alcoholic beverages, and we want to look at things, and we can only require what's on the list of stuff here. So, and it has to be reasonable. So we're requiring signage, outdoor seating, if noise and lighting requirements, buffering if they're next to residential, obtaining alcohol licenses, and COP shall run with the application. Community gardens, because that's been what's in those spaces before and echoed from the original ordinance. Indoor institutional, indoor residential, Bed and breakfasts, it's spelled out in here because we're not requiring the normal amount of parking. Group daycares, residential with more than 2 units in an existing building. So if it's over 2 units, it needs the conditional use permit. And then residential new construction, this is the part that's new. Residential new construction meaning a structure that the brand new construction in a location where the building did not previously exist or the building has been demolished, and that's where we're going to require parking. So, and it's 1 parking unit, 1 stall per unit.
Are there any questions on any of that? Okay, do you want more information or do you want to move on to the next one?
I can go through the whole thing if you want.
How long do you want to be here?
Yes.
Alderperson Nina.
Yeah, so just for the good of the group and for transparency's sake, how would an existing business that currently has a conditional use permit that maybe wouldn't conform, how will this be impacted? Because I'm not understanding a line in here, the provisions of section 78-210 shall apply to any non-conforming use, and the provisions of section 78-408 shall apply to any non-conforming structure, after it says any conditional permits issued to a property owner prior to, the grandfather.
Yada, yada, yeah.
So I'm not understanding if this, however, means, what that means.
It means it's still standing, essentially. Anything that was done prior is still standing. Do you want to, you can elaborate?
Yeah, I think it's still standing unless it's just continued for 12 months or more, right?
Well, yes, it's still standing unless it's discontinued and that's for existing non-conforming or CUPs. The CUPs might apply differently. So let's say you have a CUP and you're meeting all the requirements right now, and then you sell your business, but it's tied to a liquor license that CUP might not transfer over, but it's tied to a liquor license. Does that make sense?
And that's not unique to the Central
No.
Business District or the Arts District. That's pretty much citywide. Did you have something you want to add, Attorney Mancy?
Basically, just any legal use that currently exists, and if their property were to be rezoned to where that use is not lawfully allowed, they can still continue to use that use. They just can't expand it, and they can't make improvements that would be more than 50% of the assessed value. So there are restrictions. They can still continue using that property for that use so long as it is in conformance with the original permit conditions and the city's standard regulations for lawful conforming uses, non-conforming uses.
And by improvements, he's not talking about maintenance.
Right. Maintenance and repairs don't count. It would just
Right.
be other improvements to the property.
So the long and short of it, an existing business is grandfathered in. It could remain as it is, and even if it was sold, it would
Correct.
still be
Yes.
grandfathered in
Unless
it
there's
was
like a condition, like a conditional use permit that prohibits the transfer. So
Which is normally tied to liquor licenses.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? Did you have any follow-ups?
There was one other set of language, but it might have been from the Arts District. It's hard to keep them separate.
They're
at this
very
point.
similar.
very similar.
In my
They're
mind.
very similar.
If I find it, I will raise my hand again.
Okay. Did anybody else have any questions or comments on the Central Business District? This is a first reading, so that means it'll be back in 2 weeks. All of these will be. So if something comes up between now and then, feel free to reach out to Chris. She'll be more than happy to answer any questions and let the whole group know. Do you want to move on to the next one?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, so the next one is the first reading, ordinance 31 of 2025. This one also came from the Plan Commission. Alderperson Caravallo.
And this is ordinance 31, 2025, an ordinance creating chapter section 78-105 parentheses 4, parentheses D, Arts Zoning District, and this is a first reading.
And this one we went through at the meeting last month.
Yeah.
And, sorry if we felt that you should have been a right to speak, but there was no action taken. It's here for a first reading. I had asked the city attorney before we engaged in the presentation on whether or not that should be allowed. He said it would, and the council said that they wanted to at least hear the presentation since you were all here. So certainly no intent on our part to not include you into the conversation. You had the ability to speak tonight, certainly emails in between as well. Next meeting, welcome to come back if you have any additional questions or clarifications that you or others may need. Is there anything in particular alders want to talk about this one again tonight? Or do you want to just highlight the differences between this one and the central business one?
I can talk a little bit about that. So in this one, landowners have to come in and ask to be zoned for the arts district. We potentially have a couple properties that currently fit under this, and I know at least one of them, it would help their business because they're required to have parking right now, and this would not require the parking requirements that would fall in that particular area. So just to like kind of back up and look at this from kind of far back. So you have permitted uses, and that would be applied during the zoning changes. The only thing that would change in here is there is a conditional use permit that's required in the event that they set up basically a like a food truck park, and that's where the conditional use permit comes in. So this is like, they better, like, everything has to be laid out, and then they'd come in for the rezone, and then that would apply to the property, kind of indefinitely during that rezone process. Now, what's interesting is right now, is everybody here is aware, we're redoing our comp plan, right? But when you look at the comp plan, future land use map, it's kind of, we're updating it right now anyway, but if you actually look at the corridor, the rail corridor plan, which is a little bit more like a micro, when you look at it, it calls out these exact uses in this space in that plan that was done in 2009. So it's like the work live spaces. So this has kind of been, in some ways, I would say, before my time here, and probably before a lot of our times on these boards. So landowner would come in, rezone. They have to meet all the requirements of the district. It is very strict. There's a lot of layouts on how it would have to lay out. So you have to have certain, facades, all of that stuff. It falls under all of the other requirements, and we're trying to echo some of those in the central business district. You would get the normal noticing. All of that stuff would happen when you have to have a rezone, and then the landowner would be zoned that. I guess, is there any other questions? Because I can go into a lot of detail on this, but we saw this, again, brought it May, June, July, August to the Plan Commission, and then it was recommended for approval. I think it was September. Was it September? Yeah. No, August. August it was recommended. So, and then on my fault, I didn't get it properly noticed, and that's why we couldn't talk about it at that meeting, and that was my fault. I had 5 different things that had to be noticed at that meeting. 2 of the 5 didn't get noticed correctly, and I don't know why. And that, as the director, that was my fault. So, but here we are talking about this now, and it was properly noticed. So,
anything you want to add on this one, Attorney Matthew?
I guess just a clarification question. So this is creating the zoning district. Is it actually rezoning any properties?
No, it is not rezoning any property at all. At all.
So basically the way, like Chris just explained, we're creating this district. It's not going to apply to any properties at this point in time. It's just if a property owner wants to, they can have their property zoned for this district, and then the regulations would apply. Or is this like an overlay district to this?
It's not an overlay district. I actually thought about doing it as an overlay district for this area, but I think it'll just be easier. For when you look at the maps right now, as everybody here knows, we have, everything was done through a plan development, and so you get on, and sometimes you're like, oh, it's a multifamily residential, and it's not very easy to see that there's an overlay district on it. Which is essentially the plan development that were happening in the past. And so that was really my motivation for having it its own zoning district. That I think it'll be easier to track and easier for the public to see when it does happen on our zoning maps. This is no different. I mean, it is different, but it's no different than when we passed the pocket neighborhood. We're not requiring anybody to build a pocket neighborhood, but it's giving the option to build a pocket neighborhood, right? That's what it is, so.
Alderperson Butler, did you have a question?
Yeah, and it's essentially to marry something that Attorney Manthe said previously and what we're talking about right here. So you have an existing business that is doing business as XYZ. Unless they ceased for a 12-month period, or if they're sold and have a liquor license, they'd continue to be able to do that business. And unless they essentially requested, make me part of this arts district, if they wanted to expand, there wouldn't be a specific prohibition on that?
As long as the use is, so let's say that they've got a use right now, it's legally allowed. Even if they were to cease that use for 12 months, if it's a permitted use, they can start that business back up after 12 months. If you have a new property owner, what have you. If you're operating a business right now, the zoning district changes so that use is prohibited. So I don't know why the zoning district would change, but let's just say for some reason the zoning district changed, your use is no longer legally allowed. Then if your use ceases for 12 consecutive months, at that point it would be, you would have to bring any future use up to the standards of the zoning district. So you couldn't use it for a use that's prohibited at that point because your use has been abandoned, quote unquote. So, but that's only if the use has been prohibited by the zoning. So if your zoning still allows you to use that use, there's no issue.
And on expansion?
Similarly, as long as if the zoning district allows you to use your property for a specific use and you can expand in conformance with the zoning requirements, there's no restrictions. For the non-conforming use, don't believe you'd be able to expand, but you can make improvements to the property. That would be, if it's a legal non-conforming use, you can make improvements to the property so long as they do not exceed 50% of the assessed value. So if your assessed value is $500,000, you can make $250,000 worth of improvements.
No.
But again, just to clarify, like this art zoning district, it's not rezoning any properties at this point, so it's not affecting any legal uses unless that property owner petitions to have their land rezoned, or if for some reason the city were to take it upon itself to rezone the land, which again, not being proposed by this ordinance by itself. Like I know Madison will do that occasionally, so like the 51 corridor, there are a lot of legal non-conforming uses, but that's not what's being proposed here.
You have a question?
I have two questions. One, once a property becomes part of the arts district, can it, like, let's say it sells, can they come out of the arts district? And then the second question is let's say a business that's not part of the arts district wants to expand by buying the location next door that is arts district, can they take that out so they can expand properly?
So I can answer that.
Go ahead. I was going to answer.
Yeah, so I mean, you would have to request a rezone, basically, under those scenarios, and that's a legislative decision for the city council and to make. You would typically look at your comprehensive plan, future land uses. Is the district that they're asking to be rezoned consistent with what your future land use plans is? So yes, it would just be if, let's say somebody buys a lot next to theirs that is a different zoning, you would have to apply for a rezone of that adjacent lot to match your current zoning district. Or if your property is, rezoned, like let's say one property owner asks for a rezone, somebody buys it in the future, they could ask the council to rezone it back to the other zoning district if they wanted. So it's just a matter of whether or not the council grants the rezone request.
Can I just go follow up? Sorry.
Please.
Okay. Why, okay, and then, like on a little different note, why would a business want to rezone to the arts district?
So, for example, we have some, and I know I was talking to one of the business owners down there. They right now have a conditional use permit on, I think it's not institutional, it's like industrial, that requires them to have like a parking stall and a half or something like that for customer services. It would be in their best interest to rezone. I mean, the use that they currently have fits with the arts district use. They're not required to have parking, for example. They're viewed more as a downtown, district, and they're not required to have parking as long as they don't have like a residential use tied to it. So the other thing too is that right now, I mean, and you can get onto our zoning map and kind of see it, it's some of the areas in these corridors are kind of a hodgepodge of a bunch of different zoning districts. I mean, some of them, like we had the gentleman with the church that's right behind the fire station, there were 3 different zoning districts touching that, for example. That's just an example of and it happens in downtown areas, right? We might be able to, they can come in, rezone, and it hopefully will, like we're trying to rigidly set out like, hey, here's the requirements, so they don't have to spend a lot of time going back and forth and expectations and all of that stuff. That's really the point of this stuff, to be like, hey, here's what we're requiring, so they know and they can crunch those numbers up front before they're spending a lot of time and money on engineering that maybe we don't approve because we just don't like it or for whatever reason.
And I guess just to add on to that, because it's a legislative decision, you have a lot of discretion. So if somebody has a proposal and they bring it forward to have their property zoned in the arts district and you decide you don't like it, that provides you more discretion to deny that type of use versus like if we just put these as conditional use permits. So it's giving you more control over potential uses and the ability to attach conditions.
Alderperson Tilson.
Thank you, Mayor. So I guess my question is, why don't we just kick this back to Planning Commission and line out F there, the motor vehicle service or repair? Like, is that gonna make or break what an art zone district is? What if the youngest child here takes Milton Motors and starts decorating cars to be works of art and wants to still be in the art district?
I mean, then he could request a rezone to the arts district. Right now, he's not affected by it. That's
sure, but I guess I'm just saying, like, motor vehicle service or repair, that's very called out in this, and why does that specific line have to be in the arts district?
I don't know that it needs to go back to Plan Commission. I think you guys can just strike it here if you want to. I believe that, so I looked at, and again, I did this like in May when I researched all this, and I gave you guys a really long whole spiel about it too, is I think because of the fact that it allows for like certain fabrications, as in like welding and all of that stuff that is considered an art, I think it's doing that so that you don't get somebody that's coming into an art district and is like, well, I'm fabricating art, and they're not. Like, it's more they're fabricating other things. So I think that was the purpose of that. And I saw it in multiple, and I looked across the United States at these things. This was not just like here, but I pulled several different ones. You guys know how I do this. I always pull all these different ones. I check it against state legislation. I check it against all of these other things, and then I present you guys with the information and why I did it. If you want to strike that, I don't care. Like, I always present you guys with the information, and then you go from there. I think the thing is that we want to make sure, so like, sure, automotive, but I think that we want to make sure we're not getting things like drive-throughs and stuff like that in these areas too. I think if I'm remembering correctly, it's like automotive repair, drive-through. I think the whole purpose of it is it's not so you have an abundance of cars backing up in spaces and stuff like that. But strike it, Jordan. It's fine. Yeah.
Just a quick comment on that. We would have to not only strike it, but add it as the permitted use under under the list. So we would have to add it to like the retail use section. Because if we strike it, it just means that it's still prohibited. It's just we're not specifically calling it out as a prohibited use. We have to
Sure, and I'm understanding of that, and that's where the constituents are here, and they're concerned with that, and I can see how that one line has created the controversy with it. I don't think anyone's against an arts district or et cetera, but because of that one line that's in this, seems to be what has caused the hoopla across the city. And, you know, is it just beneficial to line that out? And if we have to add that to require, or what was that term?
Like, I think it would be permitted arts and retail uses, probably is the section heading.
Sure.
Yeah.
That would be your prerogative if you want to do that at the next meeting. I would say have the language prepared ahead of time. You can even run it past the city attorney. That way we're not what I call making sausage on the floor, which always makes Chris laugh.
It does. I mean, like, I don't care either way. I want to make it abundantly clear. I don't care, like, if we strike it or not.
Yeah. I think the other thing we could do, we could certainly provide the examples of what you did your research on, if you think that will help. So, you know, we're not just pulling this out of thin air. You know, if you think that would be beneficial, we can pull that and send that out.
And I'll have a side conversation with you.
Sure.
Okay, that'll work. Alderperson Abel?
Sorry, my thoughts are not together. I'm gonna blame it on pregnancy brain. You mentioned you thought about making it an overlay district. Just wondering why you decided against it.
Honestly, it really was the fact that we have a lot of plan developments and a lot of other things, and when you get onto our zoning code, sometimes it is really hard to distinguish where stuff is. And from that standpoint, it feels more transparent that you can click on that and it'll take you directly to the arts mixed use zoning district, rather than it takes you to central business district and then it might have an overlay but it might not. And I hate that. I hate it. For like, it doesn't feel like it. You shouldn't have to have a master's degree in planning to be able to figure out what your zoning code is. Like, it just shouldn't happen. So, and that honestly was the reason why.
And we used to have a downtown overlay district, and it got real confusing for folks that, for some things they had to go to the Plan Commission for, and other things they had to go to the landmarks for. So that was changed to streamline that process and take everything to landmarks. And then they have their design guidelines, so they have a methodology for approval. So that got to be a little confusing for folks. I mean, at the end of the day, they still talk to the same person in City Hall, but he had to point them this way or that way, and it just really made the ordinances cumbersome.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this one?
I have one thing.
Sure. Hit your mic there, Christina.
Sorry. Could you please, just for everyone in the room, explain in brief detail how zoning and rezoning works, and that there's public hearings and notifications, and that's also a very long public process?
Yeah, so depending, and Rick, I'm sure will have to interrupt me here because, you know. So essentially what happens is you have to turn in an application, and it's 4 weeks prior to any meeting. So 4 weeks prior, an application, and it has to be complete, needs to come in to the Plan Commission. That then gets noticed. It goes to the Plan Commission for a first reading. Then it has to go to Council for 2 readings after that. They cannot be back to back. So in other words, like last night was our Plan Commission meeting, for example. Today is the next day. It cannot be on that meeting. So then it has to be 2 weeks after that. It has to be noticed in the paper. Depending on what's going on, you know, if there's a conditional use permit, attach the rezone. Within 300 feet of the property, the neighbors are noticed. Rick, do you want to jump in? I mean, it's like it's a lot. It is not like it's not a fast process. It's 2 months. If 2 months, if everybody has their stuff together and they're moving forward, which sometimes is not the case, as a lot of my plan commission members know. And I'm very hard-nosed about getting stuff in on time and complete. I was like, I know we've seen that. Last night we had an ETJ that the guy was 3 weeks late, and I was just like, absolutely not. You have to wait. Like, it just, you have to follow the procedure.
Nothing too much to add. I guess just the rezoning is really, in almost 99% of cases, initiated by the property owner itself or somebody that has the land under contract.
Yes.
So very rarely is the city rezoning somebody's property against their will.
I can't think of ever doing it. I don't want to do it. I think it's bad practice, personally.
No, I would say the only time I've run across it is when the neighbor didn't want us to rezone a property that somebody requested. We've had that.
Well, it's like, but it's always initiated by the person that owns that land.
Right.
Always.
In that example it was, but the neighbor didn't like what they were proposing.
Right. I mean, that happens a lot.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Any other questions on this one? So if you have anything between now and the next meeting, feel free to reach out to Chris. It sounds like Jordan's gonna do that on behalf of everybody.
Jordan, if you want, I can stick around after this and we can talk. Okay? Yep.
There's a typo as I'm looking at this that I guess I should bring up at this point. So it's a very minor thing under the recitals. The recitals, the fourth word I think is supposed to be aimed, and it is AMID.
Okay.
So.
Okay. So we'll move on to the next one. And the next one is the ordinance 32 of 2025. Alderperson Caravello.
Let's see, where's this one?
This is
Can I explain this?
This is a level up, isn't it?
No.
No, this is not, because that was last night. This is for the 849 Highway 51. Do you want to, before I read it, you want to?
Yeah, let me explain what happened. So this was it was a CSM with a rezone because the CSM was causing the zoning out of compliance. I accidentally put it in as a resolution instead of an ordinance. It fell to the wayside. Candy caught it. It's back here. It was noticed at Plan Commission. That's what happened.
So is it good for a first reading?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so this one is ordinance 32 of 2025, approving a change in zoning located at parcel numbers, oh, these are my favorite, parcel numbers 051110285032 and parcel number 051110286912, and this is the first reading.
All right. Anything more you need to explain on this
No.
one? Any questions on this one? All right. This one will be back in a couple weeks. So we'll go to the next one, which is ordinance 33.
All right, ordinance 33, section 70-76, to amend or remove the no parking on the 400 block of East Street. And this is a first reading.
And I think this one's been here before.
It has been here several times. So many times that I've lost count, and I'm gonna let Chris explain where we're at with this and why, because Chief Jinks isn't here.
Yeah. Well, so this one was back and forth from public safety. So you might recall that we had a request from a property owner on East Street to limit parking to one side of the road. There was a recommendation that came out of public safety that came here, and the council had decided to, at that point, to have no parking on either side of the road. And it ended up going back to public safety, and public safety, basically the recommendation coming out of there is to go back to the way it was to begin with, which allowed parking on both sides of the road, was the recommendation that was made at the last meeting.
So I will say, just to talk about this for just a second. So one of the things that did come out of this is when requests come up, and if you want to talk a little bit more about that, you can. Instead of just taking it to committee, I think they're going to pass it to staff for recommend, like what I wrote, like planners reports with recommendations, and then how that ties into ordinances. And so I think that's why I got it kicked over to me. But I can see, so I did have it kicked over to me to see what recommendation I would give. Per our ordinance, I recommended either no parking or one-side parking. Again, committees can do what they want. So that was my recommendation, but my report's not on here, so I can't read it. And I didn't. At the meeting, it was decided to approve both sides. So on that, I'll kick it back over. So, but that is a change that's going to happen. So hopefully there'll be some documentation with some of the stuff in the future, like when any requests come up like that.
So we have alders that are on the committee, and certainly you can feel free to elaborate on where your position is on this one, but it's here for first reading. It would come back for the next one, and like I said, the recommendation on a split vote was to really go back to square one, and that was allow parking on both sides of the street. The challenge is you know, the road is narrow. The vehicles have gotten bigger over the years. But no matter what you do, somebody's going to be inconvenienced, because for every action, there's a reaction. So when you start saying you can't park here, well, that means they're going to be parking on other areas, which is going to cause somebody else to have disruption in their normal everyday routine on where they park. And that's really one of the challenges with parking, is you end up just chasing your tail. So my position at the committee was just to leave well enough alone. It's unfortunate that there was basically an accident of somebody backing out the driveway that began the discussion. There was never a problem until that occurred, even though that road had been there over 100 years. So to, in my view, make a knee-jerk reaction based on an incident that could have been avoided with a little bit more care, I really don't think it's advantageous to disrupt the rest of the neighbors over that. But that's just my opinion and my position. Certainly it's not based on any of the guidelines. If it was a new road, based on Chris's recommendations, I would probably be telling a different story. But on an existing, like I said, we never had an issue for 100 years until this happened, so that's where I landed.
Yeah, and I agree with the mayor on this, because this is, again, it's been back and forth, the Public Safety Committee, but at one of the Public Safety Committee meetings, there is 7 houses that are on this block. All 7 houses showed up to discuss the issue, even 2 of the houses that are on the edge of the intersection, or just before the entrance into that road. Of those 9 houses, 7 of them asked to keep it the same way, and the 1 constituent complained. So to me, that is the purest microcosm of government that you can get of, this has not been a problem. Why are you guys involved in this? If we took away street parking from every street that had a fender bender on it, there'd be no street parking anymore. So I just, to me, I don't know why we're involved in it still, and would love to just have this fixed.
And I know Alderperson Jensen has a different viewpoint.
Oh, yes, I do. My point of view is this. If that fender bender hadn't happened, nobody would have known anything about it. It would have been just nothing to do. We wouldn't have had a decision to make. However, it did happen. It was brought to our attention. And once it's brought to our attention, that puts the onus on us. We need to do something. It is a public safety issue. We have directors from Public Works, from the EMS, from fire, from the police chief. Everybody has said that that it's too narrow, that it needs to have something done with it. If we do nothing, I feel we're liable if something does happen. Probably not legally, but we know that there's a possibility of something happening. We should be doing something about it. If we do nothing, that's just not right, in my opinion. It's a public safety issue, period.
I think it's also important to mention that one of the reasons too for removing this from this ordinance and this coming back here is through this new process of due diligence that we're developing for public safety issues that come about such as this. We did discover that there is an existing ordinance in the city that prohibits parking on roads of this width, correct?
Yeah, so, and sorry, I wish my report was attached and I don't have it, so I'm like flying by, you know. So essentially what happens is when a road is established, we would look at the zoning requirements and that recommendation would be given to the roadway for parking and no parking on that road. We have a number of lots, like a number of everything here that was done pre-zoning code. So this is probably what would be considered, I think it was most roads in the state of Wisconsin, unless it is like platted otherwise in cities, is normally a minimum of 66 feet of right-of-way. It's like state law, code, whole thing. I think this one was like, what was it, 60? I don't remember. It was something like that. And so you know, you're dealing with less right-of-way on that area. The roadway, I don't remember the width on that as well. And so normally what would happen is I would have looked at it and then given my recommendation based off of ordinance. Now I remember, if I'm remembering correctly, in my report, and I'm totally gonna chuck poor Rick under the bus here, but he said something to the effect of, I think that those are considered, not guidelines. What did you say to me about it? Can you, sorry, seriously, I'm sorry.
So I would say it establishes, trying to think of the right way to phrase it, because there's standards, but there's standards that can be waived. Right. So the city has the discretion to not apply those. And that's specifically in the ordinance. Basically, you can consider the totality of factors to not have those apply. So it's not a binding, we have to have no parking here because it's this width. It's more or less creating more of like a presumption that can be changed by the city. So it's not necessarily that you're bound to those standards, but they're kind of expectations that new roads would meet those requirements.
And if we were looking at a new road, I'd be like, it can't meet these requirements because, and then I would, you know, for whatever reason, maybe there's a curve or some other reason going on there, but yeah.
Another person able?
I think that we have a duty, especially hearing feedback from our city services leaders, to make sure that we're able to provide the services in a safe and effective way throughout the community. I also think punishing one street because they were essentially caught is not the right approach, and I would encourage us to do holistic. I'm sure they're not the only street, but I think that then brings it to an even bigger problem that like this needs to be addressed on a larger scale than rather when a street comes on our radar. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, and we talked about that. Chris and I especially certainly don't want to get into a position where we're changing parking on all the narrow roads in the city of Stoughton, because we'll have a line out the door here every night if that's what we go to do. On this particular road, a couple things. If there's a snow emergency, they can only park on one side of the road, so the plows should be able to get in there. Our staff, over the years, have done a pretty good job of bringing things to our attention if they're having difficulty maneuvering in certain neighborhoods or intersections, especially where there's corners involved. This one was never flagged. If it would have been flagged proactively, I think I would feel different about it. And that could have been fire, EMS, snowplow driver, anybody, but they've never mentioned this as being a problem until a vendor backed out of somebody's driveway and hit a parked car. So to me, it was just carelessness on the vendor's part. Stuff like that happens. That's why you have insurance. Nobody got hurt. I don't want to get into business of going around and changing all of our parking citywide, because parking is a real challenge. A lot of these neighborhoods, when they were built, people only had one car. Now they have 2, 3 cars, maybe a boat, a camper, whatever else they have, and that's one of the contributing factors in these older neighborhoods, especially where the roads are narrower. We don't want to discourage people from, having a quality of life. So, those are all things that I took into consideration, and like I said, it was a split vote. It could have went either way, and ultimately you guys will have to decide. But I can tell you that, if we start, making a reaction every time an individual complains about parking, we're going to have a lot of long meetings. So that's just my 2 cents worth. Alderperson Reeves.
Just a question about it sounds like there's been a workaround for the snow plows, but did the Chief Rip chime in at all about the reality of getting a fire truck through there, emergency vehicle? I see that he recommended something other than the parking, but I've just wondered, can the vehicle get through? And I don't know if he addressed that specifically.
Yeah, Chief of Police, Chief Rip, and Director Haber all said that they would prefer at least no parking on one side. Okay, the way the ordinance reads now, it's no parking on both sides. And I would be happy if we could just get no parking on one side. I think that that's a compromise that would work. If I could just stray a little bit here, the documents that you got, I would like to explain that a little bit so you know what you're looking at. It was put together by the, Felena Freedy, who is the wife of the husband who made the asked for the change in the ordinance, 3-4 months ago. So that's where that's coming from, and I've asked Rick to take a look at this, and at our next meeting, if he could give us his opinion on it, because I'm not promoting this, I'm just giving you this as information.
Okay, anybody else? Go ahead.
Yeah, one thing I would like clarification from Chief Rip or somebody on whether or not, when there are vehicles on both sides of the road, there is enough room for an emergency vehicle, a fire truck or an ambulance. This resident provided map is claiming that there's not, but I would like to know for certain.
And I agree with Alder Nino. They know they came in. They said they prefer that it's parking on only one side or no parking, but based on the historical history that they had no issue with getting fire trucks and ambulances through.
Yeah. And we would never design.
But I think asking for the chief to show up to that meeting would be beneficial.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
I have one last thing as I'm looking at this. I've been to this street a couple of times and looked, but now for some reason, my visualization in my brain, there are no sidewalks on this street. Is that correct?
No sidewalks.
Okay. So if a pedestrian is on East South Street and they want to walk to, say, 401 East Street, they are walking in traffic, are they not? They're walking down the middle of the street. If there's cars parked on both sides, they have to walk down the middle of the street in what would potentially be traffic, although there's only 7 houses, but there is no sidewalk and there's no other option for them to get to the houses.
They'd be walking in the road, that's correct. Walking in the road or walking on the grass, yes.
Or walking on somebody's grass. Okay. Just wanted to point that out, because I wonder how I'm kind of thinking about the mailman. How does the mailman do their job on this block? I'm curious about that. So, anyhow, just a couple of things I wanted to bring up.
All right, anyone else? This will be back in 2 weeks, and we'll try to get some information together for you. We'll move on to the new business, and the first item is R141 of 2025. This was at the Finance Committee. Alderperson Butler.
All right, this is R141 of 2025, acceptance of certain public improvements made by Ford Development Group LLC for Phase 2 of Kettle Park West Subdivision, and I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderperson Reeves. Alderperson Butler.
This is pretty straightforward for what we often do. It's an existing irrevocable standby letter of credit for about $21,000. The improvements that were protected by that have been completed to the satisfaction of the city, so we're being asked to close out that, or allow them to close out that irrevocable letter of credit.
All right. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Next one is R142 from the Library Board. Is that Alderperson Viano? Is that you? Or who is that? That's you, Caravello.
Me?
Yeah. They don't get too many things from the Library Board.
No, this is, I think, the usual annual Library Board thing. So this is R142 of 2025, resolution requesting exemption from the Dane County Library tax, and I so move.
Is there a second? Second by Viano. All right, Alderperson Caravello.
And I think we should approve this as we do every year, because as we learned earlier, our libraries, and particularly our library here in Stoughton, is a heck of a deal. So I wholeheartedly endorse this.
All right, any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 And any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're back to another ordinance for first reading. And this one is ordinance 34. This one came from Public Safety. Alderperson Wozniak Scanlon. First reading.
Ordinance 34, 2025, ordinance to amend section 70-156 to add a stop sign in Magnolia Springs at Orchard Avenue at Taylor Lane.
All right, and then the
First
packet,
reading.
there's a map. Yep, first reading.
I said it, it's just
I heard you. Is there anything you want to elaborate on other than it's pretty much self-explanatory on the map?
I think it's pretty much self-explanatory on the map, and pretty much hopefully stops right into that house.
All right. I think
There's
it's
a house right there.
it's similar to the other intersections that go out to Taylor Lane where there's stop signs. And since this is a new road, we have to, by ordinance, put the stop sign in, just like in other places. When we have new developments, we have to put ordinances for potential no parking as well. But this one, they're just asking for a stop sign.
Be a little bit of a drop off there too.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to miss that one. Okay, so this one will be back in 2 weeks. We'll go into the next one, and that is ordinance 35. And this one comes from CACP, Community Affairs Council Policy, for a first reading. Find it?
Yep.
Alderperson
My
Nino.
arrows weren't working.
Okay.
All right, this is ordinance 35-2025, amending the ad hoc committee descriptions. And this is a first reading. I think I will actually pass this over to the mayor to explain.
Okay. So what you see is a list of committees that are not regulated at all or even acknowledged in our ordinances. So what we did is we took the list of the ones that were not included in the ordinance, and then we try to draw up a description of the committee, the responsibilities, of the makeup of the committee, and what the expectations are, and have it like a consistent format. So we ran that through CACP. City attorney looked at it. CACP is recommending that the council would approve these committee or to include these into the ordinances. And then the next step would be to come back with the existing ordinances that are in our municipal codes and then reformat them so we have a consistent formatting that's in a way where it's more user-friendly. And then at that point, we'll probably have to come back and renumber them because they'll be in alphabetical order. So city attorney can help me with all of that. But this is kind of the first of 2 to 3 steps in the process. We just wanted it to be clear that these are all the committees that we have and everybody knows it. And instead of, you can go on our directory and see that, but it should be right in our ordinances. And so far, these ones here are not. There's some that are in there that more than likely should be repealed. So we have one, for example, we used to have a cable commission. We no longer do. There's still an ordinance on that. There's another committee or 2 that haven't met for some time. We might want to consider dissolving them and just try to get things cleaned up. Greg probably knows about the cable commission.
That was one of my historic bits, 1967. I have one question.
Sure, go ahead.
Where does Board of Review fit in here? I didn't see that within any of either standing or ad hoc.
That wouldn't be a council committee.
Yeah, so Board of Review is a statutory committee, so it's created by statute. So if it's not in the ordinance, we can also add it, but.
Yeah, we could.
Yeah.
You're just the only one that I saw on there that wasn't included in there.
Yeah, it might be in the existing. We'll look.
Yeah, I'm fairly sure that it's somewhere in the code, I just don't know where.
Got it, okay.
It's in the code, and then we have other things in the code, like we have one for the landmarks, but the landmarks is in chapter 38, so it's like the only committee that has their own code, and the Plan Commission one is not in chapter 78, and all the rest of them are in the administrative portion of the code, so that would be another thing that we could clean up so it's consistent. It's kind of like our ordinances, they're kind of outdated, and we just continue to get more and more committees. So this will be back in 2 weeks, so if you have any questions, you can reach out directly to myself. And then that takes us to item 14, which is the amendment to Phase 2 developer agreement with STI Holdings. And we do have a presentation that I have to queue up here for.
I can provide some background, I guess.
Yeah, if you want to do that one.
So we have a development agreement with STI Holdings, or Stoughton Trailers, for that parcel over that borders 51 in County B. So we have an agreement for phase 2A, so that's basically from I'll say the southeast part of that lot to the northeast part. In that agreement, STI has to construct all the public improvements, so streets, intersections at Greenbrier and County B, and sewer and water utilities. So they also have to extend sewer from the Lincoln Avenue intersection there. So the agreement provides that no occupancy permits will be provided until all the public improvements are completed by STI. So basically there's a potential delay involved with the construction of the intersection of Greenbrier and County B. So STI is working through some issues with the county on what the intersection will look like, and they have to do some land acquisition. But basically no development can occur in phase 2A until they've completed everything. The council has previously approved a conditional use permit with Continental for a multifamily development on the far eastern portion of the STI site. So Continental was hoping to, I guess they can speak more details, but they were hoping to begin construction yet this year, or at least start moving dirt this year. And then they want to start leasing up, I believe, next year. But they may not be able to get the occupancy permit on their timeline compared to when STI might have the intersection done at Greenbrier and County B. So Continental's been working with STI and with staff to come up with, proposals. So there's a request to amend the STI development agreement to allow an occupancy permit for their project under certain circumstances. So they want to come here tonight to present sort of their construction schedule, what their phasing looks like, and then we can sort of discuss what that might look like in terms of this agreement. But I guess Continental is here and they can provide more information if you all are ready.
Yeah, so Dylan put together a presentation. I think Sarah and Katie are here to present. So you can come up to the podium, or if you'd rather sit, there's a microphone over there, whatever you feel comfortable with. Yeah, it looks like it's on already, and just tell me when to go to the next slide.
It is. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah Johnson. I'm here representing Continental 877 Fund LLC, more commonly known to you all as Authentic Stoughton. I'm here with my colleague Katie Skelton, and apologies that Dylan wasn't here this evening to present to you all. He should be a familiar face to you, but he is unfortunately mid-flight to go visit some family that was out of the country for a while. So he sends his best regards. I will try to keep this as abbreviated as possible. Everyone looks a little wiped after a long agenda, but I'm happy to go into any level of detail that you would like on the slide deck we've prepared tonight. So we are here representing Continental for the specific multifamily development proposal, but it is connected and interwoven with the underlying developers agreement that Stoughton Trailers has on the overall master development. If you could advance to the next slide, just some of the agenda items we want to touch base with you all tonight. Giving an update on the project on Authentic Stoughton, where we sit as far as approvals and permits go. We'll go over the construction of the public improvements that are being led by Stoughton Trailers and talk through the different phases that they're navigating. We'll talk through high level the amendment to the developers agreement we're requesting this evening, and also talk through some mitigating factors surrounding those pieces of information. As far as the project status updates, you were presented both the conditional use permit as well as the site plan, which we've navigated through and obtained approvals on earlier this year. Plans have been reviewed and approved by all of the different departments, and we are permit ready at this point. As far as the public improvements go for STI, so in the underlying developers agreement, they had defined this in different phases of completion. The red highlighted area, phase 1, was completed earlier this summer. That included the extension of Greenbrier Drive past the Stoughton Trailers headquarters, and it also connected Kingsland Road to the south. Right now underway is that orange colored Phase 2A. This includes Greenbrier Drive all the way north to within 25 feet of the connection with County Highway B and the connection to Creedman Drive. There are utility extensions, detention areas also being constructed as part of this phase. They are projecting this to be complete by the end of this month. Phase 2B, you can see in that green area below, which really doesn't impact much to do with anything as far as access to our project goes, but Phase 2C is kind of the critical linchpin we're here to talk to you about tonight. If you could advance to the next slide, it's a bit closer. So the Greenbrier Drive and County Road B connection. This includes the addition of some turn lanes on County B to allow left turns onto Greenbrier. The piece that has been a challenge that we've been navigating with Stoughton Trailers is the improvements, though they've been reviewed and approved by the county, require additional right-of-way. It requires acquisition of 2 additional pieces of land that sit north of County Road B. That acquisition is something outside of our control, and it's a limiting factor to allow us to go to close on the land right now, because we can't confirm our construction schedule, our lease-up schedule with our lender and our investor groups until we could confirm that the land has been acquired. So that has a ripple effect into our confidence, showing our occupancy, and though they are tracking really well, and I'm going to bounce a little bit around in a later slide, we talk about the status of the acquisition. We got confirmation this afternoon that they do have signed letters of intent from both property owners. So they are tracking and anticipating that they will be able to acquire the property by late next month in November or early December. The problem with that would be, again, just to make sure I'm very clear with you all, if we were delayed to close until December, we would be delayed in construction start into the spring. And we're really hoping to take advantage of the weather we have right now to get started on earthwork, grading, utilities through the winter months, so we can preserve that schedule and our lease-up pace that we have going into the fall of next calendar year. I do, on the next slide, talking about the amendment, just high level or overall, what we're asking for. We're asking for the occupancy limitations within the developer's agreement to be lifted strictly and solely for our tract of property, for the multifamily development, in the unlikely event that the County B connection would be delayed in any capacity. This would only apply to our project, not to any portions of the master development as I understand it, based on conversations we've had with staff and Rick in his evaluation of the underlying agreement. The amendment will allow us to proceed to closing and break ground. Right now we are tracking for an early November close, and we would begin work immediately, so we can take advantage of the weather while we have it with the grading and utility activities. If you could go to the next, thank you. So, mitigating factors. Why am I asking for this, and why should you be comfortable with the request? We are very, very focused with Stoughton Trailers on making sure that these offsite improvements are completed in a timely fashion. The connection to County Road B is going to be a critical one long-term for the success of our residential community, access for our residents long-term. It makes all the sense in the world, and we are actively talking with them almost on a daily basis now, but we have scheduled weekly calls with their construction team, our construction team, and the subs to make sure that we are tracking those dates appropriately with them and monitoring those improvements in the activity. We talk through also the acquisition of the land, which I shared with you. They have both of those pieces of land under contract to purchase, or the letter of intent to purchase. Our lease-up and construction schedule, which I'll go through in a few of the upcoming slides, I want to just show with you that even if they did experience a delay in completion of those activities, there's still a buffer before when we would actually be looking and projecting occupancy on the first few of our buildings. We did, as a goodwill gesture, take a look at the traffic study that was completed for the overall master development, and we took a look at worst case scenario. If we can't have the connection to County Road B by the time we're looking to gain occupancy on some of our structures, and we are projecting no cut-through traffic on any of the residential streets, it's strictly limited to Greenbrier out to 51, what does that level of service look like? So we'll share with you some information in the following slide on the traffic study. And then we also want to talk just briefly about, from an emergency services standpoint, access to the site. We can skip through the land acquisition. Again, they have both of those tracts of land with signed LOIs from both of the property owners. Construction and lease-up schedule. I apologize, it's kind of hard to see. Hopefully you can see a little detail on your screens, but what we're trying to reflect here is that no occupancy of any of our residential buildings is projected until October of 2026. That's already providing a solid 3+ months of buffer from when Stoughton Trailers is anticipating having County Road B connection complete. The roundabout at US 51 in Greenbrier is tracking to be complete in September of 2026, also before when we would anticipate occupancy on our buildings. And our buildings are staggered with how they are getting completed by about 3 to 4 weeks each. So taking a look at when the occupancy would be even to a 50% complete wouldn't be until about June of 2027. We have a few quick visuals to share with you just on the construction and lease up as it relates to Stoughton Trailers improvements. So this is a visual showing early November of this calendar year that they are projecting that phase 2A completion, and that is when we would be breaking ground on the property and completing earthwork. And the next slide, excuse me, in April of 2026, we have, I may have just missed a slide. Here we go. So the Phase 2C improvements at Greenbrier and County B intersection begin. They would begin working on that right-of-way. All of our site utilities would be installed at that point. Gravel road base would be down on internal drive aisles. So we would have access appropriately for emergency services at that point. But they would begin construction activities as soon as the weather is warm enough to commence construction in the spring. In the next slide, they are projecting, Stoughton Trailers is projecting a June 2026 completion date for the connection and the offsite improvements as it's related to County Road B. It is not until late September of next calendar year when the roundabout at Greenbrier and 51 off to our plans southwest. The roundabout improvements are also being projected to be complete at that point. And then the following month is first when we would be projecting to begin our construction and lease-up schedule, with buildings, residential buildings, turning once every 3 to 4 weeks in sequential order. As part of that occupancy, before any occupancy would be granted, we would have the infrastructure and the roadways internal to the site for emergency services constructed, so there would be safe movement for emergency vehicles and any responders that would be needed at any point during the construction activities. I think we've got 2 more slides. So we talked about October being those first few buildings that would be leasing up at that point. And looking about a year ahead, in June of 2027, a full year delay, if Stoughton Trailers would experience a full year delay in making that connection out to County Road B, we would still be just under 50% leased up as far as residential traffic on the property. The TIA update, as I stated, we did have our consultant team take a look at what the numbers would look like. Worst case scenario, if full occupancy was in place on our project and there was a singular access point from Greenbrier out to 51, what would that level of service look like? And the results came back showing that it would operate at a level of service A. That is not considering any of the other development that would occur in the future in the master plan, the master development. It would be limited to Stoughton headquarters and our multifamily residential community. But reflecting that it would be operating in a level of service A for traffic. The other thing we wanted to point out is just considerations for emergency access, signage. We recognize the imperative and critical nature of making that connection to promote vehicular traffic along Greenbrier, not taking shortcuts through residential neighborhoods. We are committed to having conversations with our lease-up staff and potential residents, making them aware of the appropriate drive patterns and not shortcutting or cutting through neighborhood residential communities that are existing. We are fully committed to and working with staff and putting up signage to that effect. And we also did talk with the fire department about potentially putting a gate up at the intersection of Greenbrier and County Road B until a point where that full connection is made, just limiting that to emergency service vehicles only. I believe I'm going to wrap up here. I know that was a lot to take in. I think the visuals are very helpful if you'd like me to go through any of them in more detail, but really our ask again this evening and for you to all to consider is taking out our tract from that occupancy restriction, hoping that there is full comfort in seeing the construction schedule that really, as things are penciling right now and papering out, it's going to be a non-issue, but the fact that the acquisition of the additional right-of-way has not taken place yet is prohibiting us from close and potentially risking a delayed start by about 5 months and potentially risking us being able to close in any capacity. I will open it up if there's any questions or if you'd like me to elaborate on any of the slides that were shared this evening.
Okay, thank you. Alderperson Reeves.
Just one question. Is the land acquisition a binding contract?
Legally binding, I'm sure you could work your way out of that in a court setting. It is traditional in our practice when we're looking to acquire new pieces of land, the first step is always obtaining that signed letter of intent. So it maps out the purchase price and the timing to close. So they're mapping out the deal terms at a high level and the commitments from both parties to proceed to a more formal contract to close.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'll just make a couple of comments. So the gate that Sarah mentioned, the fire department would put what they call a Knox box on there, so they'd have access to unlock it and go in and out in case there was an emergency that required them to go in there. More than likely, if the unfortunate situation of somebody in the construction crew got hurt or something like that is when they would access it, or if there was a gas leak or something like that. Or, but Chief Ripp was okay with that when we met. The original traffic impact analysis, you might recall, included at some point possibly putting a roundabout in at Country Club Road and Greenbrier, as well as this access here with right in and right out or whatever that was going to be there. But that was based on the development fully developed. So what they did is they just took it based solely on the car counts at the Stoughton Trailers headquarters, as well as the units that they're putting in. So as Sarah mentioned, that would be a level A. I think A is probably the best, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Was it go A through D, I think? Or
there's an F. There's a failing condition as well, yes. Yeah.
So I recall that at one point, I think the Roby intersection was probably nearing an F. But so really what they're trying to do is focus on making sure that it's safe for the headquarters and for their development, and then beyond that, I think that's what we would talk about in closed session.
Right, so I guess now would be the time to ask any questions of Continental if you have any, want any more information from them. Otherwise, this is a request to amend the development agreement, so if the council feels like it's necessary to go into closed session for bargaining and negotiation reasons, we would have the option to do that.
And the developer's agreement is with STI.
Correct. So the agreement's not technically with Continental, it's with STI, but it's sort of three parties that would potentially be working together here.
And just to share, we've had conversations with Stoughton Trailers. They're aware of the request that we're making this evening and agree. They understand the context to why we're making the ask. So we just felt, based on the timing of our development and better articulating the reasons why we're here or asking for the amendment, we would be the better party to describe the hurdle we're trying to work through right now.
Yeah, and I think it's really important for our community to get this project to the finish line. Continental has been great to work with as we've gone through the planning process and ultimately through the city council approvals that Sarah mentioned. They've tried to incorporate many of the ideas that we suggested to meet green space requirements, added a trail, the sustainability efforts that they've made. And the other reasons why this is really important is we know we have a housing shortage. This addresses part of that for a certain group of people that they're marketing their property toward. It increases the tax base. It helps us with the net new construction. It provides increment for the TIF, which is beneficial. So, you know, for all them reasons, you know, we as a staff really worked hard to try to brainstorm a way to help nurture this thing to the finish line. Alderperson Abel.
Is there a reason to go into closed session?
I'll let the attorney answer that.
So that's up to you all, right? So if the direction is we're comfortable with this, move forward with it. We don't need like a motion or anything. Just we're looking for direction tonight. So you could say we're not interested in amending the development agreement and just leave it at that. If there's interest in amending it, we would bring back the formal amendment at the next meeting for you all to consider or approve. Hopefully, like because of the developers' timelines, they would be looking for an approval at the next meeting. So,
because right now the agreement we have really doesn't allow us.
Correct. There's no way that occupancy could be granted before all the improvements are done.
Right. So if we don't amend it, we risk them not being able to close on the property.
Well, okay. I'm personally in favor of amending it. That's where I'm at. I don't see a need to go into closed, but that's just me.
Show of hands.
Yeah. So the question would be is, what do we want that amendment to look like? And I don't know if you have any ideas about.
Right. So
Chris is jumping up and down over there too. Okay. So Alderperson Reeves has a question first.
Well, I just wanted to ask our planning director your thoughts on the traffic impact study and from the planning perspective, what do you think about this idea?
So to give a little bit of background, when they met with us, I was like, I want to see a traffic study showing that the increased traffic will not impact any of the adjacent stuff if by giving you occupancy. So that was the first thing that I asked for, and they got it to us, I don't know, I think 2 days later.
We met on Thursday.
I mean, seriously, it was that fast.
Yeah.
So they provided that to show that they, you know, if and when this intersection doesn't need to be developed. The second thing is that while we are allowing occupancy on their property, nothing else is getting occupancy until this intersection is complete, and I want that made very clear in the developer agreement. Because, you know, and I don't know if you go occupancy or building permits, I don't care, but I think that with the traffic impact analysis that was originally done, they updated that traffic impact analysis to show that it could support the Stoughton Trailers headquarters and their development, and that's what they did, not the rest of it.
We'd have to do additional traffic analysis if we wanted to know the rest of it. I think my assumption would be is when we did the overall traffic analysis, typically the commercial lots that are there when they're built out will generate more ins and outs than maybe an apartment might be 2 or 3 trips a day. SGI headquarters 2 or 3 trips a day. If they come in the morning, go out for lunch, maybe come back, go home, whatever. So I think those are lower car counts, but when you start getting into the commercial, I think that's really when the traffic increases because of the transit businesses or customers that are coming in and out. And
Yeah.
that phase is probably a ways away.
Well, and then on top of that too, we're gonna have the park, but, and
Right.
keep in mind too, like just, you guys have been here so long, so I apologize that I'm bringing this up, but when they did the traffic impact analysis, there were 2 access points, right? So they redid it just to show theirs. I would say beyond their occupancy, I don't think that you guys should be granting anything else until that intersection is done. And I know that I've said it. I know I've said it. I'm not going to say it again out loud, but the whole time I'm like,
Yeah.
guys, this
And
needs to get done.
And I think that for STI, that gives them the incentive of getting these letters of interest turned into land acquisition. It motivates them to keep that going because they have some single-family lots and some other multifamily lots that could be marketed now that they're going to want to sell. Some of the other items are in future phases where we have to, get through installing lift stations and additional infrastructure to support them future phases. So I think this accomplishes the goal of moving this project forward, but it also keeps STI focused on what they need to do in order to develop the rest of the land. And I'm confident, based on what I heard tonight, that they'll get that done. Go ahead.
I guess just as a follow-up, I'd be comfortable with the amendment, but, and I think it'd be a given, but the language I'd want incorporated, I would want to make sure that our planning director, the police chief, and our fire chief have reviewed the language and they're comfortable, because they're going to think of things that we won't. And I think that's the way to tidy it up, and I just want to make it clear that I would want them reviewing that and include it.
So if that's the direction you want to go, we'd have another meeting, Rick would draft the language, and then we'd bring a document here at the next council meeting. Is that the?
Yeah, so I guess I would work with staff, Continental and STI to come up with an amendment to the agreement, and we would bring it here in 2 weeks for consideration.
I see heads nodding, and anybody have any objections with that? I haven't heard anybody online. Hopefully they're hearing us tonight. Okay.
I would also just encourage all of you, if there's one slide you want to digest a little further, slide 9 that has the chart mapping out STI obligations and when they're tracking those improvements, the roundabout at 51 against when we are projecting occupancy. I think that's the one that really is the most meaningful, because based on our schedule right now and based on our understanding of where STI has been to date and where they're tracking in the future, this really could end up being a non-issue. And there's a 4-month buffer as it sits right now between where they're projecting completion and where it would potentially become an issue for us. But we need to be really mindful of having this buttoned up, most specifically to get to the closing table and begin construction.
Okay. Thank you for being here tonight.
really appreciate everyone's time.
Thank Dylan for the work that he did
I
when
will.
he gets back.
I will. Thank you so
This
much.
is a really good presentation.
I appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you all, or Dylan perhaps, in 2 weeks.
All right.
Thank you.
So I guess just for my own sanity, I've got direction, I guess, to move forward with the agreement, or is there a desire to go into closed session?
Yes, move forward.
Okay, I think we're good then.
Move forward, but
Yeah.
this will be the last exception, probably.
I see people grabbing their stuff.
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by, was it Butler? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Have a good night.
Bye, Sarah.
One aside on this one. After DOT finishes up that 51 is the roundabout, I don't know if we ever made any action on considering the reduced speed limit between that roundabout